Hello everyone, welcome to this week's Gran Turismo 7 Daily Race and Strategy Guide. We're off to a combination that we've never been to previously in GT Sport or indeed GT7 so far, and that is Group 2 cars around Circuit de la Sarthe. Now, we do have the chicanes for this one. We've got 5 laps to get around, and the settings pretty much from there are very similar to what we had when we went to Spa a couple of weeks ago in the Group 4 machinery, and indeed when we went to Circuit de la Sarthe, albeit without the chicanes in the Group 4 machinery. And that does indicate that there is a strong possibility of dynamic weather playing its part here. Now, we do have the medium tyres because that's the default tyres for the Group 2 cars. But yeah, I expect the weather or the dynamic weather for this one to play out very similar to the previous dynamic races, whereas, 90% of the races will be dry or certainly not really interrupted by the weather, and there's going to be that occasional one where the rain will come down so heavily where you'll be possibly considering a pit stop, or at very least spinning around in circles quite a lot as you try to negotiate the track on slick tyres. Now, one of the big characteristics of Le Mans, of course, is those long straights. There is 5 of them, so top speed is going to be a factor, or certainly, quite important to have in the car. So we did a bit of a test. We kind of set up a lobby with the race settings, albeit we set it to equal conditions mode, so we had no wind influencing the speed of the cars, and we basically ran it all the way from the pits down to the barriers at the first chicane and recorded the top speed of each car, and the results of which are what you can see on screen. So the Mercedes CLK coming in at 188 miles per hour, the Lexus from 08 coming in just a mile an hour slower, but there has been a decent BOP update to Group 2, and it's nice to see that at least all the cars are coming in to a much closer range of top speeds, whereas previously the CLK was just massively quicker than everything else. So prior to update 1.31, this would have been a no-brainer to use the Mercedes CLK, but things are a little bit different, and I decided, top speed is all well and good, but let's do a little bit of a race run in some of the cars and just see how they're comparing in terms of lap time and finishing time. We know the CLK is the fastest in a straight line, but in terms of lap time, how will it stack up to, say, the Nissan GTR from 2016, and we'll also do a test in the Lexus from 2008. So coming to the end of our 5-lap run here, and we're going to do a much better lap here to finish with. We do a 3:39.4. Something to do with the conditions on each of these runs meant that the track was much faster on the last lap, or seemed to be much faster on the last lap in all 3 of them, but a 3:39.486 and the finishing time 18 minutes 20.4. Very stable car to drive, nice and easy to get around the track, and of course you get that kind of free lap time, if you like, because everybody gets that top speed. Next up, we've got the Nissan GTR. Now, so far our lap times very similar, 3 minutes 40, sort of in the same kind of region as we were doing in the CLK, but once again, as previously in the CLK, we're doing a much better lap here on lap 5. Now, we have picked up a few penalties over the course of this one, and we will take a look at the penalties a little bit later in the video, but none of them are kind of like blatantly obvious time gained, but it is going to add 2 seconds onto our finishing time. We come across the line here for a 3:39.5, again significantly faster on the last lap compared to our previous laps, and our finishing time 18:22.597. Now, if we kind of take away the penalty that we sort of get added on at the end, that's going to take us to within a tenth of the finishing time of the CLK. So the cars do negotiate the lap quite differently. The CLK obviously has the top speed on the straights, the GTR has a little bit more downforce through the corners. Now, I've never been a fan of the GTR, I found the GTR harder to drive, but interesting that in terms of base lap and actual finishing time coming in with very similar results. Final test here, the Lexus SC430 from 2008. It was only 1 mile an hour slower than the CLK down the straights, and again, if we look at the lap times, coming in with very similar ballpark lap times compared to the CLK and the GTR. And we were on for probably a 3:39.6 or 7 here, but we made a mess of the chicane at the end, and it comes in at a 3:40.1. Lap 3 on this, we made a big mistake. We probably lost about 1.5 seconds. If we take that into account, we're going to come in at around about 18 minutes 20.1, and our best lap a couple of attempts down on the CLK and the Nissan GTR. So what did we learn from that? Well, not a lot, to be perfectly honest with you. The BOP looking quite good all the cars coming in at very similar lap times and very similar finishing times. So it will remain to be seen what will be the best car. I'm sure that will come to the fore when the leaderboards go up tomorrow morning and people start doing a lot more testing. But one thing I can promise you that will be a factor in this race will be those track limits. Now, Le Mans has always been well known for having pretty brutal track limits, or joke track limits, but my god, they seem to be even more brutal than ever. I was picking up penalties in all sorts of places, but you're just not really gaining any time. I think every single corner I managed to pick up a penalty at some point over the course of these test runs, and they are going to play a big factor in this race. You're going to hear so many streamers moaning about the track limits, picking up silly half-second penalties for no reason. If anyone can explain where we got the half-second for this one, I am all ears, because that one seriously confused me. I have no idea what that one's about. Most of the other ones I could look at and I could just about justify because we were kind of pushing the limits, but that one was particularly bad. But yeah, penalties are going to be a big factor in this one, I'm pretty sure of that. So learn the track limits, learn how to avoid them, and you should be in good shape at the end of the race, because the vast majority of drivers are going to pick up at least one penalty over the course of this race. So we're taking a look at the cars, we're taking a look at the penalties. Again, I did call this one a racing strategy at the beginning, but very much like we went to Spa. It's more like a race preview, if you like. We've tested a number of cars here, but didn't really learn too much from that, even though the cars kind of have some different characteristics. It looks like they're coming in very similar in terms of lap time and finishing time. My gut feeling is that people will gravitate towards the Mercedes CLK as the week goes on. The reason for that is you kind of get the lap time for free, if you like. Everyone gets that lap time down the straight, and whereas with the GTR might have a little bit more downforce, it becomes a skill issue. To get the lap time out of the GTR probably requires a little bit more skill, because you've got to kind of maximise that car through the corners. So my gut feeling, and it is just a gut feeling, I could well be completely wide and off the mark, is that the CLK will come to the top of the leaderboard and will become the car that most people are driving. And it'll be very hard for anyone in a GTR to actually overtake this car. So, again, if there's a race full of Mercedes CLKs versus a couple of GTRs, they're just going to get mauled on the straights, and then they're not going to be able to overtake through the twisty bits because of the dirt here. The other big factor of this one is, of course, those penalties. If you can avoid those penalties, then you're going to be in good shape come the end. But it's going to be very hard to get a 5-lap run without picking up a penalty. You're going to see a lot of frustration and infuriation, I reckon, from those penalties from people who are live streaming, including myself. I suspect I will have a good moan as the week goes on. And one thing we don't know if it's going to be for certain is going to be that dynamic weather. How much of an influence will it play? And if it does, are you going to be forced into a pit stop? Now, the pit stop here is not as long as you might quite think. Group 2 does have a shorter pit stop than most of the other categories, but it is still 25 seconds, which is a big chunk of time to lose. But the nature of this track means that if you are running on slick tyres around this track, you're going to lose a lot more than 25 seconds. So it's going to be a little bit of a joker in the pack, just what kind of influence this dynamic weather, if indeed dynamic weather is actually included in this race, is going to play. 25 seconds is still a fair chunk of time to lose, but losing that 25 seconds is going to be a lot better than getting caught halfway down the Mulsanne straight in a deluge on slick tyres, where you're going to be spinning around for days trying to get that thing back to the pits with the power that this car has, or these cars have. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting race overall. What will the dynamic weather do if it's present? Avoiding those penalties. What will be the best car when it comes to the race? All these questions remain to be answered as we go into this week's daily race. We'll definitely be live streaming this one in a couple of weeks. A small apology, I did put a wee community post out. The cat was unwell, my kind of time was taken up making sure that he got back to full health, so there was a lack of live streams this week, but we should be back with a bit more action this week. Do join me for them if you can. Thank you very much for watching. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Goodbye now.